or 1,500 kilowatt hours of sun energy. And that means that if you could collect the sun energy from 4 of those squares, that would be enough to run all the electricity in your house for an average household. Now, that's a little bit unfair because when you collect sun energy, it's not 100% efficient. And solar panels might be 15 or 20% efficient. So you'd actually need more than 4 of those panels. But there is enough sun energy to definitely do a lot of work here. Other things that are not pointed out on these kind of maps, yes, indeed, it's redder down in New Mexico than up in Michigan. But when you think about it, Michigan have nice, long summer days. And when do people use the most electricity? It's in the summer running their air conditioners. And so our peak production actually is balanced out with these long days when we're producing a lot of solar electricity. Second thing is it's cooler up here, so the panels run better. Electronics like to be cold, not hot, so they're more efficient in a cooler climate. And finally, we've got this thing called self-washing solar panels in Michigan. That is, it rains enough that you never have to worry about dust accumulating and obscuring it. And believe me, in the Southwest, that's something you really have to think about. And cleaning panels with water and so forth can be problematic. So it's Michigan's not so bad. Also, if you look at other leaders like Germany, which is a solar leader worldwide, their amount of solar insolation is only about 2/3 of what we get, about 1,000 versus 1,500 kilowatt hours per square meter. And yet they've been able to effectively deploy lots of rooftop solar. So the other thing you might ask about, well, why boutique solar on my house? It's true that you can buy into consumers' energy, and I think it's good that consumers has but the thing is, when they make electricity, it's far from your house. And so you lose a lot of energy along the way due to line loss. And secondly, these nice green plots could be used for something else. You could plant native species there and support pollinators, or maybe some farmer would plant crops there. So that's displacing. If you put it on your roof, that's already built surfaces or someone else's roof. So you're not sacrificing open spaces. So there's definitely room for doing that. Finally, if you think about where we're going with electricity, it's towards a smart grid with distributed generation and storage, meaning that electricity goes in from multiple sources, old-fashioned power plants or renewable power plants or panels on your home. And with batteries, that gets balanced out locally and makes a much more stable system than the one that just went out this afternoon during the thunderstorms. So Arnosti's got into this back in 2010. We had this installed. We put in a 4.4 kilowatt residential 18 panel project on top of the garage. Went live February of 2011 and makes about 80% of our electricity. When we went in, it was $8 a watt, including new roofing underneath. And now projects are $3 a watt or less. Quite a bit cheaper. We got a 30% tax credit. That's dropped somewhat in the meantime. But still, now getting the same system would be much, much cheaper. You can look online at the daily production from the system. This, for instance, is this last week. Can you tell when it was sunny? Got these beautiful curve-shaped things. And even on cloudy days, you can see that the system is producing a lot of electricity. So that's one thing to be aware of, that the panels don't need sunshine, they just need light to be active. All right. This shows the entire production of the system from when we turned it on at the beginning of 2011 till now. There's a familiar pattern of, you can see winters and summers, and early spring is actually kind of peak production because it's cool. There are no leaves anywhere around. We get shading late in the afternoon. And so it's been very reliable and produces about 80% of what we use every day. So what about maintenance? For the most part, I mean, it doesn't make any sounds. We plugged it in and it turns on. our system is now almost a decade old, and the inverters, that's part of the electronics on them, were first generation and have needed to be replaced. Fortunately, there are local services, so we've used Matt Cadwell's Sumter Solar Service. They've come out and replaced these inverters that were defective under warranty. And apparently Sumter Solar Service also does solar hot water servicing, which we have not used, but I'll tell you about that system. So our hot water in the house is provided by 2 panels on the back garage roof, shown with the pink arrows. And these panels essentially are black metal boxes with copper tubing and then antifreeze that circulates inside. Sun shines on it inside the black box, it gets hot, it goes down with a little pump into the basement. And in the basement, we have heat exchangers. These are circular tubes of copper where the heat from the pressed stone antifreeze transfers into water that's pumped out of a big tank. And then there's a 119-gallon tank back here, which gets heated up. And on sunny days, like we've had the last few days, the water temperature gets pretty hot, like 140, 150 degrees. This solar tank then drains into a regular hot water heater. So if the water is hot from the sun, the regular heater doesn't turn on. During the summer, this is hardly used at all. During the winter, it's mostly our source of hot water. In the shoulder seasons, when the solar hot water is kind of lukewarm, it's supposed to get warmed up, and it does get warmed up if it's really not running at all. So this system hasn't had any maintenance issues at all since we put it in 2005. But I would call Sumter if we had questions. Finally, this past year, we managed to go one step further in renewable energy, and we got a plug-in car. This is a Prius Prime. There's an electricity port, and it drives about up to 36 miles on electricity, which is for the most part sufficient for all of our around town driving. We really only use gas when we're going on a longer road trip. So we're not all the way there, but that was pretty much all we could do with our house. So in order to have a greater impact, I've been involved in the green team at our church. Our church has worked with other churches on energy efficient projects. We also have a solar project that we installed on the roof of the sanctuary. This is a 20 kilowatt system, provides about 60% of the power needed by the church. It's a nice south-facing roof. And we also sponsored this solar summit where local congregations and people interested in solar projects could confer with a Zoom conference, and we're interested in following up on that. That is, who's interested in either initiating projects at their house of worship or other groups. So I guess that little sound means it's time for me to stop talking. That's my contact information here. It's just my last name at MSU. You can Google me too. And I'd be glad to take any questions from people who are in or thinking of solar.
Dave, this is Charles Morris.
Hi, Charles. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Is your solar electric system a grid-tied system?
Yes, it is. It's a completely standard grid-tied. We actually signed up for an early program through consumers, and they pay us 25 cents a kilowatt of whatever we put into the system that we're not using. So when the power goes down, it goes down, but mostly the power doesn't go down.
You don't have batteries as a
Nope, haven't gotten there. Okay. Yep. The only battery we've got is the one in the car, which it's kind of satisfying. I have an electric chainsaw that I use to cut firewood. So when the sun is shining on the roof and I'm cutting renewable wood for winter fires, it's somehow very satisfying.
David?
I see another hand, Dale Petty.
Dale Petty. Would you, under today's economics, would you still do solar hot water, or would you just put up some more electric panels and use a electric water heater?
Oh, I see. That's an interesting question. Well, I think the solar hot water was quite a bit cheaper at the time than photovoltaics. We had help from a program at Urban Options, now Michigan Energy Solutions in East Lansing. I think I wouldn't want to have a backup of electric water because that's just the most expensive way to heat the water. But I would say for a homeowner who's got a certain amount to invest, definitely photovoltaic panels are the way to go because you displace a much more expensive source of energy. In any event, I wouldn't recommend anybody put in a regular electric hot water heater, although the heat pump kind of hot water heaters have been, maybe that's what you're talking about, Dale. So there's a new technology in which you put a heat pump on top of the water heater. It sucks the heat out of the basement air and puts it into your hot water. Those are much more efficient than the regular old coil resistant hot water heaters. And you probably would have better economics if you had panels running that thing. So yeah, I would say if you were to go to that level of sophistication. I'd point out that the Todd Hauser House on Park Lake Road, they have a 7 kilowatt ground mount in back of their house, which you can see from Park Lake. And that runs a heat pump, which heats the house. And it also has a heat pump on the electric water heater. So yeah, that's a complete system, but yeah, I think that the solar hot water is less of an automatic thing around here because we don't, there are not so many installers, and it's not so much off the shelf kind of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I see Christian Greenhill is joining us. I think that she's a friend of Mariana Kerpola, who's a known environmental consultant. Welcome.
Shannon has a question.
Shannon.
Hey, Dave. I really appreciate everybody sending me emails and contacts and things because John and I have been wanting to put a new roof on, and we thought this would be a great time to put solar on at the same time. And I just feel a little overwhelmed with, what's the first thing we should do and how do you seek out the right kind of companies, and do you find a roofer that also does solar, or do you just go separately? And then I've seen a whole bunch of ads on TV just lately that look like it might be something a little bit different where it's not into the consumer's grid. I think it's its own thing. I'm not sure. I've just looked at ads for, like, there's a zero down, and I think it's to back up maybe if you run out of electricity or something.
Well, one way that people put in these systems is the company will simply bill you every month, and they take the solar tax credit. And then that makes it advantageous for them. And then eventually you can buy the panels. So there are a number of reputable outfits that do that. I'm not aware of the Michigan scene because this is much more common in California, for instance. Another possibility or a way to think about it is, right now, if you were to take out a homeowner's loan, what percentage would you pay? And you take the tax credit, which is currently 26%. And then you own the thing outright, and you would get net metering. You could get in under the net metering, depending on which power company you're buying from. But John Sarver is actually quite an expert on those kind of calculations, and he'd be a good resource person when you're weighing. It also depends on your budget.
Yeah, well, we did set some money aside that we might be able to use, so
Mm-hmm.
some, yeah.
Yep. I think that in addition, Michigan passed a law so that your property taxes won't go up right away when you put it in, which makes it the economics better. And what we did for our system is our solar contractor worked with Ron Turkis, who's in Hazlitt. Ron put on the roof, and then our contractor put the thing on top of that, and that was fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your solar progress.
Dave, I have another question. What's the difference, or how would you contrast, besides the sheer size of a KW generated, between the system on your house and the system at Hazlitt Community Church, and what are the similarities and differences in systems and lessons learned?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Charles. So the system at church was installed by Peninsula Solar in Olmsted out of Marquette, Michigan. And for that, instead of using microinverters on the back of each panel to turn the electricity from direct current to alternating current, they simply used optimizers which correct for any shading issues. And then using optimizers on the back of the panels, all of that direct current goes into one of two inverters, which are mounted on the side of the church. And it's a little bit simpler. And that's worked very well. We haven't had any issues since we put it in 2017. I think the technology has just gotten better in the last decade. The panels are more efficient. And as far as lessons learned, if you want to be an early adopter, then it's kind of like buying the first model year for a car. You got to expect that there will be glitches or things like that. But right now, photovoltaic panels are very well developed technology. And if you don't want to get fancy, if you're not trying to go off the grid, if you're just putting a grid-tied system in, it's pretty much like buying a washing machine. Pretty much, except it's more fun because you can go online and watch the curves go up and down on sunny days. Shannon.
Do you know anything about, because we're considering metal roofs, is that like against the rules with solar, or?
Well, as you may know, Ferguson's just put in a solar project on their property. They ended up going with a ground mount because they had a metal roof and they were reluctant to put holes in it.
Ah, yeah.
I think they just didn't want to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's absolutely verboten, or maybe you lose your guarantee from the company.
I think
Guys, could I?
I think Okemos High School had a metal roof and they put in a 20 kilowatt system.
I see.
I think with a metal roof, you have a different sort of, a way to attach the panels.
I see. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey
This
guys,
is Lincoln Grand Rapids. We have a metal roof, standing seam metal roof.
Oh, I see.
It was very easy for the installer to clamp on the rails and put on the the PV panels.
So that's great to know. Yeah.
hey guys, this is Ken Zabera. Can you hear me?
Yes.
With the standing seam metal roof, they make a clamp called a S5 clamp that it's basically just a set screw that pinches the seam, so there's no penetrations at all. So it's a more expensive roof, but it's also a longer lasting roof and allows a solar installation without any penetrations at all.
I see.
Okay.
So that's also good to know. Yeah, as John has said in previous presentations, this year is a particularly good time to get into the solar, to claim the 26% tax credit, and for consumers' energy, at least, to be still under net metering, which gives you more money when you're producing excess power. But overall, I mean, the pennies and watts aside, the reason that we went in for this is that a lot of the idea behind putting in a solar project was not that we were going to like fix the world with one project, but we wanted to see what could one person do or what could one group do. And solar actually works pretty well in a distributed basis. it'd be very difficult to buy a small windmill and make that efficient. But in terms of sunshine falling on a roof, if you gather it and put it into your home electricity, it's just about as efficient as if you had a gigantic solar array somewhere out in the countryside. So you don't have the big efficiencies of scale that you would with wind power. And it's also very visible, so people can see how that works. And the way that it works is it sits there and it doesn't make any sounds, doesn't give off any pollution, and it works year after year. As you can see from our 10-year, well, almost 10-year record. Goes up in the summer, and we're powering the neighbor's air conditioning on hot days. So John, on future talks, are we going to be password protected?
Well, either Zoom has changed their policies, which is possible, or I just screwed up when I did the scheduling. But in order to prevent any future problems, I will make sure a password goes out with further invitations, down the road for next week.
Okay.
So we won't have this mistake again.
All right. Well,
John, they changed their policy a week ago.
Oh, they did.
Starting on the 10th, I think all meetings are password protected, but when you set it up, the password is embedded in the link. If you send
okay.
the link that they give you to send everybody,
Right.
it's embedded in it. But if people just copy and paste it, then they have to put the password in separately. But it'll be in the email.
that's
Okay.
good.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. I thought I had screwed up, but policy change, huh? Okay.
Mhm.
I won't make that mistake again, though.
So if somebody wants, I will send copies of my slides to John Sarver. And if anybody would like to look at them, or if anybody knows someone who wasn't there but wants to look at it, you're welcome to access that slideshow.
Yeah, and I think, I've been recording this, so I think I've captured most of it. I missed maybe just a few comments at the beginning. So between your PowerPoint and the recording, I'll make sure people who weren't able to get in have that available to them.
Very good. Well, thank you everybody for coming then. It's good to see Jennifer here representing Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and other people I know from Hazlitt Community Church, and the rest of you from, oh, and also Charles, sorry, also from Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. I think that it's really important for those people with a hand in solar to continue the discussion while we're locked down with coronavirus and fretting about the state of the world. We need to be ready for adapting to global changes that are coming our way, and it's nice to have some positive answers that working individually and in groups, we can actually affect change, because coronavirus isn't going to be like the be all and end all in terms of major problems facing humanity. So this is one area that I think we can make a difference.
And next Thursday, Roger Eberhard is going to come back and talk about his house installation. Last week he talked about his a smaller system that he uses for EV charging, but Roger will make another appearance next week to talk about his array that's basically providing power to his home. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and hope you can join us again next week.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Is this a Zoom? Yeah. Yeah, on here there's